So, all right. So this is a watercolor from a scene from a postcard at the Blue Ridge Parkway. Can you tell us about a story, an experience that you had on the Blue Ridge Parkway?
I remember when I was in 5th grade, my science class took a trip to Banner Elk. But first we went through the Blue Ridge Parkway and all through Graveyard Fields area, and just traveled on our buses down the parkway and would stop and look at nature. And prior to me going on the trip, some friends and I had looked up this book by a guy named Charles Edwin Price about haunted East Tennessee and North Carolina, basically the haunted Southeast. And in the book he told this story that was supposed to take place along the Blue Ridge Parkway area where we were going, which was about the Wampus Cat. The Wampus Cat was this Indian princess that had been turned into a gigantic mountain lion after her father had murdered her fiance. And to take revenge on them, she was able to transform herself into this mountain lion that stood up on its hind legs and would go off and kill people. She was always trying to find revenge. And so the entire time we were on this trip, my friends and I just convinced each other we saw the Wampus Cat everywhere, that we knew it was there. We convinced each other that we had seen it. You know, at nighttime, you know, at dusk, we would always see something moving through the woods, and it was always the Wampus Cat. And we scared my friend Brian so bad that he, for the field trip, he asked his father to bring his gun, which he did.
He did. He brought the gun.
He brought the gun. I saw it.
All right.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so what is your experience with Grandfather Mountain? Have you been there, and what was it like?
Well, I went to Grandfather Mountain several years ago. I'd really heard a lot about how beautiful it was, so I was very excited to go up there. And unfortunately, it was cloudy, sort of a misty day when we went up there. Even though it was nice down on the lower lands, but once we got up in the mountains, it was very cloudy and misty. And it was a nice drive up there, and we were expecting beautiful views, and it was going to be very exciting, I guess. We got up there, and it was just covered in tourists, and we went up to the beautiful swinging bridge that we had heard so much about, and it was just a big metal bridge, and a lot of people were out there. But I guess the best part was walking away from the parking area and going actually up onto the mountains where the trails started, and there were some neat ropes to climb and ladders to go up top. But other than that, we didn't really get to see the view. So it was a little bit overrated in my opinion. I've been to so many beautiful mountains in western North Carolina that have been way more exciting and interesting. Grandfather Mountain, I would say Mount Pisgah is probably my favorite hike. It's always nice and sure it gets cloudy sometimes.
And when you went to Grandfather Mountain, who did you go with?
I went with my partner.
So it was the two of you, and how long did you end up staying?
We spent most of the afternoon there, so we kind of went probably late morning and spent the rest of the day there. But I think the park closed at 4 in the afternoon, so we were kind of hesitant to go out on the trail because there were signs in the parking lot saying, if your car is left here past this time, then we're going to form a search party for you. So we were really worried about going back to our car.
Wow.
So we didn't get to finish our hike. We started the hike, we had to come back before we finished it because we were worried about not getting downtime. And it was cloudy, so it was kind of a dreary day for that.
And did you go, have you been back since? Was that your...
I haven't been back, that was my only experience.
Would you go back?
That's the only time I've ever been. It was many years ago, but there's so many mountains around here, besides Grandfather Mountain, that I would prefer to go on. I mean, I've had lots of good experiences hiking besides this.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's great. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Cheers, that was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That
was great. No, I think that's...
Okay, this is a watercolor based on the state capitol in North Carolina, in Raleigh. And if you could just talk about an experience you had at the state capitol.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Raleigh, and I went to elementary school there, obviously, and St. Timothy's Elementary School. And one day we had our field day kind of thing. We called it Blue and White Day, at the Capitol building, so we were actually like out in the front yard, like hopping around, and we did all the relay races and the race where you gotta like run to the end of the line, like sit on a balloon and make it pop, which was terrifying. But so we were doing these sack races, and I'd been elected, much to my demise, as the captain of our sack racing team or whatever. So we're in these like burlap sacks and we're hopping down and everything. And I knew that the girl next to me named Elizabeth Fleming was going to be like my real tough competition or whatever. So I'm hopping and I'm winning and hopping along, and I look down, I'm like a yard or so away from the finish line. I'm hopping and I look back behind me to see how far away Elizabeth Fleming is from me. And as I did that, I lost my bearing or whatever, and I fell face forward into this field here. And I bit through my tongue, and just like blood squirted everywhere. And as I went down, like this statue is of like this guy like standing on a horse or whatever. It's just the weirdest thing to be like going down in your burlap sack, and your last image of life you think is going to be this statue of this man on an iron horse. So I fell, and luckily my head landed right on the finish line, so I did actually win the sack race. But I had this horrible bloody tongue thing, and all the kids were just incredibly horrified or whatever. So they took me into the Capitol building, like into some secretary's office or whatever, and she put, like, balled up some paper towels with some cold water and like put it in my mouth and put it on my tongue. And so I was just kind of hanging out in the secretary's office with wadded up paper towels in my mouth that were just dripping with gross kid saliva and blood and everything. And so they didn't want the other kids to get too scared of me or whatever, so they made my mom meet us out by that iron statue. So I was just kind of hanging out day at the field races or whatever. So it was a pretty eventful trip to the Capitol building.
Did your mother pick you up and then took you to the doctor,
yeah.
or?
Yeah, she picked me up and we went to the ER, and he put 6 stitches in my tongue. So, but it was so worth it. I mean, the look on Elizabeth Fleming's face was just priceless as I went down.
Yeah.
So it was pretty good. It was worth the win.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Good story. Thank you.
Thanks. I still have the scar. As proof.
I was in Cleveland, Ohio in the winter of 2005, and that following spring I was going to be headed back down to the Outer Banks of North Carolina when my van got stolen. And so after a few weeks of the van not being recovered, the insurance company finally settled, and my beautiful early 1990s teal conversion van was valued at only $1,200, which was disappointing. So anyway, with the money and a little bit more that I had saved up, I was able to purchase another vehicle that would be a good vehicle to move a large amount of my stuff from Cleveland down to the Outer Banks with. And I ended up purchasing a 1986 Ford F-150 with a 4-speed Granny Gear V8 and a cab on the back from a nice young preacher. And so a week later I drove down to North Carolina with the truck, and all was well, and I drove her on the beach and all over the Outer Banks, and then she began to start breaking down. And for about 8 months she was broken down in my front yard, and in that time also acquired a flat tire. And I was quite distressed over the situation. I didn't really have a lot of money, so I couldn't really fix her at the time. And I had been listening to a radio show in the evenings. It was a call-in show where callers would call in with their problems, and the host would play a song for them. And this gentleman called in about how much he missed his Joyce Ann. They had been separated for a while, and he just really wanted her back, and that really sort of encompassed the way I felt about my truck. And so that's when she became Joyce Ann. So Joyce Ann eventually did get fixed. This guy, Lenny fixed her for a bottle of whiskey, and later I traded a sign painting gig for a mechanic upshore who fixed her. And he actually fixed her right before I went on a journey from the Outer Banks to the mountains of North Carolina, which I had never seen. And she had a penchant for overheating, especially on roads where the speed limits exceeded about 45 miles per hour. So we spent quite a bit of time on the back roads and sort of picked our way slowly across the state, and periodically overheated and had to sit on the side of the road with the hood up for a while. And each time that happened, someone always stopped, if not two people stopped, to ask if I needed help. And that's what made North Carolina have good roads.